I can start as I was introduced first, just for the sake of, let's say, being more organized. And Santiago, thank you for introducing us. It is very important because once you start looking at different sectors, for instance, I don't know, anti-corruption, or transparency, you realize that it applies to many different fields. It applies to youth organizations. It applies to the stuff that goes on in the disability rights movement. You can have, for instance, conflict of interests anywhere and everywhere in each of these spheres. And this is why it's not possible to like completely, let's say, separate oneself from everything else and work only on one focus, because first of all, we also have different and multiple identities. Yeah, we at the same time, for example, we can be young people, women, and people with disabilities. We also can be those living in conflict affected areas and so on. So I mean, we can belong to ethnic or religious minorities in the country, and all other different identities. And therefore, of course, again, working on only one of these is not possible. Then we also can have different needs, right? It could be education, employment, social protection, healthcare. And even if you work on one of these groups of people, you will have to address different issues that these people face. So, finally, we all are citizens of our countries. So we all are affected, maybe differently and unevenly, but still we all are affected by big things that happen in the country, things such as political instability, wars, or natural disasters.
Thank you so much, Asma. Yeah, that pretty much covers a lot of the different dimensions of why working cross sectors is relevant. Mila, what do you think? Do you have anything else to add? And also, I would like to put for the next another question is, how do you think politics intersect with this, and how do politics connect to other issues that young people care about?
Thank you, Santiago, for the wonderful introduction. And I have to agree with my colleague Asma. And I also believe that work across sectors is the best way to make a change in a society. The goal is to make an impact by combining actions from different sectors. So, of course, it is more complicated and it may be more time consuming and challenging, but at the end, the results that we get are better than if we just focus on one issue. And about politics, there is a cliche saying that everything is politics, but I think that it is true because everything is in some form or fashion politics, because everything involves people who, by the nature of life itself, engage in the decision-making processes, elections. They pay taxes and bills. They use the educational and healthcare systems. So that is why it is very important to have a quality civic education so that young people can become more active and actively contribute to society.
Thank you so much, Mila. And I have to say, I completely agree. Everything is political to an extent. And that brings us, that's a great segue to our next question, and is, how do you pick or how do you choose those specific sectors to work on? Is it easy to work at the intersection of multiple issues? Do you think it would be easier to narrow down and work in single ones? Based on your experience, Esma and Mila, what do you think?
Yes, so I will answer probably both of the questions. I would say working on one issue probably is easier, but it's also very boring. I have to say that in the beginning, when I was still studying in school, in like high school, and I was thinking maybe choosing like career path or what did I want to study. And I always wanted to be involved in politics exactly because I could not pick one particular sector or one particular thing that I wanted to do. And when you are in politics, you have to deal with multiple issues. I mean, you have to deal with conflict resolution, you have to deal with foreign affairs, with the youth issues, with the women's rights issues, with all of these things. And actually, I here want to remember when I was in the States on an exchange program, my host sister, for pretty similar reasons, she wanted to study nursing and become a nurse, but she says she wanted to do anesthesia program instead of being specialized in like some particular field of medicine, because that way she could see different surgeries and attend to different medical procedures and not be bored. And again, like when I wanted to be involved in politics and when I entered university, I saw and I realized that I was kind of excluded from many things and due to my disability, or I was treated differently. And I realized that being, only attending different modelings of European Parliament or of some ambassadorial or something and participating in debates will not help me to assert what I have to say, because people will simply not hear me due to my disability. And if I do not address this issue somehow, I do not address the disability inclusion issue, I will not be able to participate neither in politics nor in international relations, nowhere essentially. And when we speak about politics and how do politics relate to the youth issues, yes, I mean, politics relates to everything, because it's exactly what Mila had said, is that politics, when we think about them, we think about something big usually, right? About rivalries of different parties, especially in the countries of I would say of post-socialist bloc or whatever, or in developing countries. We think about politics as about some kind of rivalry between parties or some big actors, but indeed politics are what determines how do we live our everyday lives. I'll bring example of organized crime and general criminal situation in the country. If the criminal situation is really bad, if people generally speaking do not feel safe on the streets, people with disabilities or women will be much more affected. Because, for instance, for me, as I'm blind, and I will not be able to identify if somebody, let's say, throws a rock at me in the street, I will not be able to, unless he or she says something, I will not be able to identify that person. So I'm much more, quote unquote, vulnerable to different type of violence than another person, a person without disability might be. So for me, the general criminal situation in the country is of utmost importance. And the same I can say about many other issues, such as this contributory pension scheme, which again, what it means is more money you make, more you will get once you're retired. But the thing is, when the women who are usually responsible for home, for children, for childcare, and who earn less because of glass ceiling, because they usually are not being promoted, and so on, these women will end up with almost nothing when they get older. So the system that is, on its face, it's neutral, but it also will affect people with disabilities greatly, because we have much lower employment rates than the mainstream population does. So politics is really everywhere. And I mean, of course, again, in the worst situation, if there's a war, then everybody is affected. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Esma. That's an extremely valuable insight. And yeah, Mila, any ideas to contribute to that?
Yes, well, I think that it is definitely not easy to work at the intersection of multiple issues, but same as Esma, I'm the kind of person that hates being stuck at one place in life. So when I finished high school, I was kind of on a crossway, which faculty to choose, where to go, and because I've always loved medicine, but also I've always loved politics and being active and engaged in the society. So I was like, okay, I can't be a doctor and heal people with law school or political school, but I can be a politician with medical school. So that is why I kind of combined the two things that I love into one, and I proceeded a career in medical school, and I'm also active in the society, joining different programs and initiatives. I don't know, and that is it. Maybe we can move on to the next question.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Mila. And just overall, it's amazing the level of effort that it takes to combine such what people usually think as separate fields. No, but as Esma mentioned, everything is related and everything has its political dimension. So it's always important to highlight that. Thank you so much each for your answers. Just as a small comment, so that we are able to cover most of the questions, let's try to keep it interventions to less than 2 minutes. And that being said, the next question, what do you think, based on your experiences, which have been the most important challenges when working across sectors? And how did you overcome these challenges? Esma, why don't you take this one?
Before I answer, I just want to add also two points to the previous question, because these are things that actually ongoing right now in Georgia. And one of them, and both of them are actually concerning corruption and elections, and how do these things intersect with disability and with other different issues. And the first is the targeted social assistance that we have in the country. Recently our government announced that those people who are receiving this but are capable of working should be actually given jobs and should work. The only thing with this idea again is that if it's not done with the proper consultations, we again might leave out a lot of people. For example, the single mothers who have little children. How are they supposed to work if the kindergartens keep children only until 5 p.m., for example, and most of the jobs really here require overtime working. Again, and with disability related, I want to also add is that currently we are restructuring our disability evaluation system so that it would be more individualized and everybody would get assistance that he or she needs based on individual assessment, which is great. But again, if the country is corrupt, today, for instance, we have a lot of claims that people are threatened that they will be stripped of their targeted social assistance if they do not go and vote. And this implies that they should vote for a ruling party. And if they don't, that they will be stripped of this assistance. With disability benefit for now, if you have a medical diagnosis, like it's kind of cut in stone, right? You have this diagnosis, which is harder to fake. Then you get this much benefit. But if this will be individualized based on your social needs, that will mean that some individual will have to assess you, and this would be which will be much more subjective. So again, because that would be also subject to more revisions, now these people, the people with disabilities, will also be threatened that if they don't go and vote for a certain party, they will be stripped of their disability benefit, or they will be downgraded to, let's say, less degree of a disability. So nothing will function if the state is corrupt, for example. And when it comes to how did I overcome the challenges that come from actually working for different sectors. The thing is, I was involved, I tried to participate in many different projects, projects that were related to innovation, and learn and get to know people from there, because personal connections are very important. I got interested in peace building, and I met some people who work in this sphere, who work with conflict affected areas. And that's when I had a case when a blind woman was not able to be enrolled at a university, and she was living on the conflict affected area. I was able to reach out to the Ministry of Reconciliation, which is dealing with these issues. I was able to locate people in the Ombudsman's office who were working on these issues. But yeah, I mean, establishing connections is very important.
Thank you, Esma. How about you, Mila? Which are the main challenges that you have encountered in your experience, and how have you been able to overcome them?
Well, working on different sectors, and especially studying med school and doing all the activism at the same time is really time consuming. So it's really necessary to have good time management, and also you have to have knowledge of the different sectors that you work with, and be persuasive for the things that you want to achieve. I would say that the best way to like overcome these challenges is, as I said, to have good time management. Then good communication skills are also a must, and studying, lots of studying, and sharing opinions with people that are engaged in these sectors, because they have the experience and the knowledge. And when you work in a group, it's better to just have everyone's thoughts and opinions, and combine it with your with the things you want to do, and then the result turns out great.
Absolutely, Mila. Thank you. Both you and Esma touch on the importance of building networks and having these connections in terms of activism and political activity. Esma kind of touched on this, on the relationship that she has been able to build with political actors in her country. I was curious about you, Mila, in your case. What are some of the political leaders or political institutions that you have to coordinate with, and how did you manage to build this relationship?
I had the chance to encounter political leaders, not only from local and national level, but also international ones, because I'm a part of few networks that are engaged in political education in my country. And as I pointed out earlier, I have been active in society for quite a while now, and I had a chance to attend many seminars, debates, and networking events. I was even invited a couple of times in the government of Macedonia to a roundtable to discuss about youth policies. And I think that these types of events are a good chance, maybe even the best one, to speak up in front of others and in front of relevant stakeholders to issues that are important, and to address the problems that you may encounter, and the problems that you want to be solved.
Great, thank you, Mila. And Esma, in your personal case, when you mentioned that you were able to coordinate with the Ombudsman office in Georgia, and in general, like building these connections at the government level, I was curious, and it would be interesting to also have some insight on that. And how did you manage to build these connections? How did you first get your foot in the door, basically?
Right. So I would say that, for example, I was adding randomly members of parliament and city councilors on Facebook, because, again, I was writing about political things, and I wanted, to build the auditorium, and for these people to have a possibility to see what I have to say. And then also, for instance, with the Ombudsman's office, it was a bit easier because I was a member of the Consultative Council there anyways. And so I addressed the people with whom we usually work on disability affairs, and they redirected me to the relevant people. With the Ministry of Reconciliation, again, when I attended a meeting with the minister once, I was invited, and I had I got a mic and I asked a question or made a comment, and then I edited her later on. And because I was reading also of her stories, and I've like she was doing some writings and blogs, and I was reading them, and I also wrote her, so sort of I connected with her in a human way. And then this allowed me later on to approach her when this girl had issues with actually her deputy minister. She used to be in the Ministry of Education, and I approached her back then because of the specialized school for the blind issues, and because I thought that the school should not be closed, and it's not still, it's functioning anyways. And actually it was funny how I caught her. I found out from some fellow activists that there would be events in which the Minister of Education will be present. And I just walked in that hotel in that day, and it was normal because some people probably recognized me because I am generally attending different events. So nobody really prevented me from attending. And she was there, the deputy minister was there instead of the minister. So once she finished up speaking, I asked my mother to bring me to her. And we essentially caught her on the hallway when she was speaking with someone else. And I asked if I could talk to her for like 5 minutes, and she said yes. And then I approached and I told her what I should have told her about the specialized school. And then and we exchanged some contacts, and then I was able to also notify her of the issue. So what I'm saying is that, yeah, you have to dare and think a bit out of the box, and have this kind of entrepreneurial spirit where you can approach someone who you don't even know, but because you have a need and you feel kind of responsibility in front of your community, that you should do something for them, you lose this fear, and you might lose this a little bit of this politeness, because but this is, I would say, this is normal. And if we watch different movies about the US and how lobbying and lobbyism is being done in the Congress, this is exactly how, when these Congress people are walking out of the session room, and they're approached by different interest group representatives, and they are speaking to them. So it's normal, and we should adopt this culture of daring sometimes a bit more than it's usually expected from us because of our culture. And like especially in the conservative societies, it's kind of unexpected that a young person, a woman who is not being introduced to this let's say high level official, that she walks up to her and speaks to her. But again, we should really create social demand for this kind of culture.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Esma. And yeah, it's oftentimes it ends up being just about daring to, as you said, just daring to approach the person, even, and just not usually through the official channels, but trying to build like that personal relationship that oftentimes ends up being more useful, as I'm sure both of you have experienced in your work. We're close to wrapping up. We have one question left, and it relates to, we already covered how do you engage with government entities, kind of the higher level degrees of decision making, right? But it's also important to discuss how do you engage with other youth activists, with other young people in your work, and how are you able to connect with other young people and engage them directly. So what guidance would you give to other young leaders, other young people who are trying to get into political activity, activism, cross-sectoral activity, and which do you think are the most important skills for these new practitioners to develop? Mira, what do you think?
In Macedonia, we have a problem with youth often feeling unmotivated to join initiatives. And I think that it is mainly because they feel that they have nothing to contribute, or that their opinion won't matter. And I think that the best approach is to involve those young people in the decision-making process, and then listen to what they actually have to say. And not only listen, but try to implement their ideas and solutions to some problems in government policy. I think that it is the best way to set an example and also motivate other young people. Because when they see that their ideas and their suggestions have actual practical results, other young people will be also motivated to do the same thing. And about the other question, what are the most important skills or skill? I think that it is actually a set of skills. So you have to have empathy. You have to have problem-solving skills. You have to be creative to find random solutions to even more random problems. You have to have the ability of active listening. Of course, confidence is a must. Good communication skills, accountability, and of course, maybe the most important thing is motivation. If you have motivation, you can do amazing things.
Absolutely, completely agree with you, Mila. Motivation is key, especially when we face complex circumstances that we don't tend to see fast results. Motivation is extremely relevant. Esma, in your experience, what do you think and what would you recommend?
Yes, I also would say that in my case, hosting an online show, but before I also was hosting one on TV, did help me to connect with both the political leaders, because I did invite some of them when they were still middle-level bureaucrats or already parliament members. I was inviting them to my shows, but also regular young people who were active in different spheres, like young scientists, young entrepreneurs, people in business and in NGOs and so on. So that did help me to, let's say, connect with people, because everybody likes when you give them something, you give them voice. I actually like what usually and often saying is that people are selfish and it's normal. We cannot completely deal away with that. But the best thing is when, and politicians also are selfish, and the best thing is when we have to think about how do we, speaking about the fact that young people are not motivated, we should think, why are they not motivated, right? So in my case, how do I do it? So one thing is, yeah, I invite them to actively participate, be guests at my show, or attend their shows when they invite me. Also, like, speak at their events when they invite me. Send them links to different trainings where they can participate, go abroad or not abroad, but do something in Georgia or meet some important people. You know, not always go alone, but also tell the organizers that I will bring these few people with me, or let's bring this person instead of me, because, well, I'm already, let's say, kind of overqualified maybe, or maybe not, but you know, sometimes stepping aside and letting others to participate. And I also, for instance, you know, years ago, I wanted to do a training in my school, but kids would not show up because there were no coffee breaks. And yeah, I realized this, and later I did the project finally where I had funding to do coffee breaks for them or to organize some food. And that was also a motivator for them to attend and participate. So we should think about these things and not neglect them, but you know, think, what can we do to actually motivate people, to send them to different events that they had never a chance to be, to help them connect. Like when people ask me, young people, for contact information of some politicians, I try to give them this, because again, we should really create channels for others. And actually, this is another like demonstration of your strength and influence. It's not only in how many projects you can install yourself, but it's more about, it's completely another level when you can install others into different projects, and you can actually bring people into different organizations or projects, or help them get employed, for instance.
Okay, thank you very much, Esma and Mila, for your insights and your thoughts.
There's just one thing I want to also add for this question. There is an amazing program funded by the European Union. It's the Erasmus Plus program, which allows students and young people to educate, travel, share experiences and opinions. And through my organization, we've managed to send more than 200 people to these programs. And when I talk to them, they often say that Erasmus Plus changed their lives, and they are different people before and after Erasmus. So programs like this are actually also an amazing way to get involved and truly motivate yourself to do more when you come back to your country.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mila. And as Esma also said, exposure is key. Having that opportunity to travel and go to events and just broadening your perspective is definitely something extremely relevant when engaging individuals. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your insights. I'm sure that everyone that's listening finds them incredibly valuable. With that, we conclude the panel. So thank you so much. If any of the participants has any other questions, we're going to have a Q&A session afterwards. So please feel free to drop the questions in the chat box or just raise your hands and we can get to it. So thank you so much, Esma and Mila. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Santiago, Esma, and Mila, for your insightful panel discussion. And I'm really glad to hear about Mila and Esma. I'm really glad to know that you both have worked with the political leaders and made some changes for your country. And also, as Esma said, it's really interesting to work in a cross-sectoral issue, but as Mila said, it's really challenging, especially when it comes about time. It's really challenging to work in a cross-sectoral issue. Yes, the panel discussion was very insightful, and thank you so much for Santiago, Mila, and Esma. And now we have time for question and answer session. Before that, I would love to request and inform every participant, if you have any questions to Tinashe or any of the panelists or to any one of us, please feel free to drop your questions. So now I would love to welcome Asim from Jordan for the question and answer session. I would love to give short introduction about him. Attorney at law and member of Generation Democracy Network, Asim path as an attorney gave him the opportunity to advise, communicate, and work with courts and state authorities. Asim participated in democracy on advocacy and advancing democracy, gender equality, and youth empowerment as an associate with the International Republican Institutions, Youth Leadership Academy, and the British Council's Young Arab Voice for Debate and Advocacy. Through these initiatives, participants demonstrated their views for improving the country's culture, contribute to policy debates and skills building exercises and guest speaker discussions. So now I would love to welcome Asim. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sofita, and thank for all of wonderful panelists, Esma and Mila, and for Santiago for moderating this panel. If I would like to speak about working across sectorally, it is something really amazing because you feel always yourself in the dynamic. Let me give you a simple example. Before I joined the law school, I used to work in the medical field as a medical laboratory technologist. At that field, you always have the time to experience and make those testing in scientific methods. But the ability to interact with people is far more important because the chemistry is really found among people connections. During my work, I get the attention of the people, especially in the time of elections. So for youth observation in the election, it made young men and women, young people, like all of us, engaging in the political process, because those policies across sectoral is really matter, not just for those who work in different sectors, but for all sectors, for all of us. So this experience gave me the chance to see how much diverse, how much colorful society can be, and how much youth networks can be wonderful. That's really an encouraging for me, and I encourage all of you to be part of this mission, because after all, life is about leaving something behind, the legacy which we might leave behind. This legacy should be always building up to create the momentum. And for speaking about dynamic and connecting with people, let me speak to you about another member in the Youth Advisory Group, which is Winnie Adele. Winnie, which is joining us from Uganda. Winnie is a graduate in information and communication technology. She is working as a youth advocate and helping young women and girls' well-being, which is something really encouraging. She's even having an award for International Youth-Led Africa for an initiative called 40 Under 40. So you can see it's no difference across this globe. Before I ask you, I would like you, if you have a story, if you have something really amazing to share with us, to have your time and see this Google form, which allows you to select what kind of topics you would like to have a testimonial about. Feel free to unmute yourself, speak verbally, or join us in the chat. If you have the ability, make your video on, and I would love to hear your questions in this part. Let me see from Eliana. Eliana, she have a question. What are the best practices youth leaders need to remember to make youth advocacy effort inclusive for large groups? I would repeat the question again. What are the best practices youth leaders need to remember to make youth advocacy effort inclusive for large groups? Subita or Timashe, if you would like to answer this question, please join.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? It was breaking.
The question is, what are the best practices youth leaders need to remember to make youth advocacy effort inclusive for larger groups?
Okay, thank you. I think the first thing I'm going to suggest is self-accountability. And a leader needs to be able to hold themselves accountable before they fight for any cause, and they need to keep themselves in check. And when a leader prioritizes traits like self-accountability, then they're more likely to prioritize other important traits you need for leadership, like